sixth race weekend of the BMW IBSF Bobsleigh and Skeleton World Cup. We're in a winter wonderland at Altenberg in Saxony. We're in the far southeastern corner of the country, close to the border with the Czech Republic, at one of the oldest tracks in Germany. Now, this track was built back in 1968 and then rebuilt as an artificial track in the early 1980s, built in secret by the DDR as the toughest track they could imagine. I'm Martin Haven. Joining me for our commentary today is Elizabeth Meyer. And Liz, this is still a very tough track for our athletes.
Definitely. It's a notoriously tricky track, and athletes with having a little bit less run volume can really struggle here. Now, at the top part of the track, it's not a lot of decline. Athletes are just trying to get the sled as calm and relaxed as possible as you get to this big omega corner. You're going to see some big waves in here as the athletes are trying to get a smooth transition into 5, into this top labyrinth to maintain as much speed as possible as they head into this big corner 9, where we may see a little bit of flopping into this straightaway as they prepare for Kreisel. Kreisel means circle in German, and that's exactly what this is. It can be really difficult to get a clean exit as you head into these quick little 11 and 12 corners, into this 13 before big 14 into an uphill section. It's important that we don't see some skidding happening there into 15, into big 16 and 17 as they go across the finish line.
And the uphill section there is where the track crosses over the outrun. You go back under yourself as you finish the run, and that's all relatively new. That was added later in track revisions. Well, Kim Kilicki of Germany is our World Cup points leader. She has not been off the podium all year in women's bob. Lauren Alter, Kaylee Humphries giving chase, with Bianca Reeby, the winner, the Canadian winner in Monobob in Whistler, her first race of the season. She lies in 4th place. Our field is back to something approaching full strength again, although Lisa Buckwitz of Germany has not, or will not start today. She had a crash in yesterday's Monobob race. She's also struggling with the consequences of feeling a bit fluey, as is this woman, Melanie Hassler. But Renee Speaks, I think, taking the sensible option of keeping Lisa Buckwitz fit for the World Championships, which start next week in St. Moritz. So teams already on their way there. The skeleton athletes train today in St. Moritz, and we will see what the future brings for all of our athletes over the next 2 weeks in the World Championships. And Elizabeth, for everybody going to St. Moritz is always a little feel of going home, because it is where the sport started, and it is still just such a mystical place to go.
Definitely the birthplace of our sports, and it's really cool because it's the only natural track left in the world, and it's really an honor to be able to slide on that track still.
And in fact, the weather's been so warm there recently, up until the last week, literally, that it's been all but impossible to slide, which is the downside of natural tracks, which is why the artificial ones that you can keep iced even in moderately cool weather are the much more common way of going racing these days. Race 6 of the BMW IBSF Women's Bobsleigh World Cup. It also counts for the European Championships. Former European silver medalist Andrea Greco with Teodora Vlad. They won that title 2 years ago in Sigulda in Latvia. She's the European silver medalist in Monobob as well from yesterday. She gets our competition underway. Martin Haven and Elizabeth Meyer watching the action with you.
She's a really great pilot, and we've seen that with her European Champs results in the past. And it's really cool because the Romanian program, although they don't have a track at home, they've always been consistent on the World Cup.
Nice smooth arc into corner 4. So much speed lost yesterday in the 2-man race for the men from 3 into 4, but she looks like she's got that nicely taped. She had a best ever World Cup result in Altenberg here last week with a 5th place finish. Let's see if she can match that. Speed is good. The ice here is always exceptional quality, even if it is a bit misty. Drivers were complaining in yesterday's snow that visibility in the monobobs was pretty limited. The snow sticking to the visor. Across the line she comes, 57.88. Well, let's give you a bit of a benchmark. A 5.97 start. The record is 5.54 from Alana Myers-Taylor and Brianna Jones. And the downtime 57.88. The record is 56.22. Kaylee Humphries and Felicia George set that back in 2018. Yeah, visibility is going to be an issue, I think, but there's fog for everybody, so you're just going to have to suck it up, Buttercup, as they say in the trade.
Just going into 6 there, she clips that right wall, which really sends the sled into a bit of a skid. In Kreisel here, you're going to see the sleds waving a lot. In bobsled, they manage to steer with the pressures, so we are going to see that waving a little bit more.
Yeah, it's an awful lot of sled to try and hold down against gravity. And, of course, if you're fighting that force, then you're giving speed away. Her visor missed it up on the inside as well. Normally, when you click the visor down, you'll keep your thumb in between the visor and the helmet to allow a little bit of airflow. Next up for China, 18th World Cup race for Wai Ming-ming, the 27-year-old. 22-year-old brakewoman Wang Yu. This is her first race with Wai this season. She's normally been with Ying Qing. We'll see her later, but they've swapped the girls around, obviously trying to find the best setup for the World Championships next week.
Definitely, and this is like a relatively young team coming into the World Cup. I mean, they had their home Olympics last year. There's a lot of future ahead of them for these athletes.
Yeah, Wang Yu, that indication of how young she is. She's 22. This is only her second World Cup race, so still relatively new to bobsledding. Wai had a pretty decent run yesterday in the Monobob. She was in 11th place, but that was a big mistake in the second heat that dropped her out of a top 6 finish. Nice exit out of 9.
Really nice looking run here.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Big skid.
Oh, commentator's curse. Sorry.
Big skid, and she drops behind Andrea Greco. And actually, with Greco's overall experience, and especially here in Altenberg, Andrea really should be ahead of both the Chinese sleds. 58.25, so a deficit of 3,700s.
The Chinese are now coached also by the Latvian coach that was with the Koreans for quite a few years.
Chinese program continuing to build. Really good to see, actually, that they are returning to the World Cup and continuing with the bobsleigh program after the games in Beijing. Obviously, this whole program, bobsleigh and skeleton, was created for those games, but now, like the Koreans, carrying on in the World Cup.
Bit too early on the intake onto corner 4. Big pressures there. And here to 11 and 12. This can be a very tricky section for bobsleds. Just going to take a tap as she heads into 13, sending her into a bit of a skid.
Yeah, almost squared her up. Her World Cup best is a 4th place finish in Sigulda, so she's just on the fringe of the medals. Next up, second World Cup start for Georgeta Popescu of Romania. Raced in the Monobob yesterday. Antonia Sarbu behind her, also a second World Cup start for her. They both made their debut in Winterberg a couple of weeks ago.
A little bit long there on corner 1. Corner 1 can be very tricky for bobsledders as well.
She was the Youth Olympic champion in 2010-20. She's the under-23 junior world champion with her brakewoman in the women's bobsleigh.
Just a little bit of a messy run here, but this all comes with experience, just having run volume, which she will get throughout her career.
Yeah, and I'm sure she'll be very pleased to head back to Samoritz. I'm sure she's got great memories of Samoritz, the Youth Olympic Games in 2020, and taking a gold medal. I mean, if that's not her home of ice racing, yeah. I want to know what it is exactly. 9/10 back, 3rd fastest run so far. So, again, very limited experience of this track and any other. And 58.94. Well, she got it down. I mean, it was a little rattly at the line, but she got it down.
But she is so young. I think she's a bright future for the Romanian program. I mean, she's going to look at that run and see a lot of places to fix up for the second heat.
2 20-year-olds, already junior world champions, and Georgeta, the driver, an Olympic champion as well.
Coming out of 14 into that uphill section, she just takes a bump as she hits the exit of 15, making that pressure in 16 really, really heavy for herself and her brakeman.
And those 3 bottom curves are so quick, and they all come at you, and they're so long as well. If you lose speed going in, it just evaporates. I mean, it really slows you down.
And I know how that hit feels as a skeleton athlete. As a bobber, I can't imagine.
Yeah. Well, next up is Kim Kilicky, our World Cup points leader, our European champion. She won the title last year in St. Moritz, so does that make her one of our favourites for the Worlds this year? Well, last year she was pushed by Lisa Buchwitz. Today she has got Annabelle Gallander behind her, and they won in Whistler and in Park City. And Kilicky has not been off the podium this season. She has been the German driver on form.
She's had a really great season this year.
She finished in the silver medal position last week behind the absent Lisa Buchwitz. But yesterday in the two-man race, we saw last week's podium turned on its head a little bit. Let's see if she can hang on here. 4,500s in the lead. This should be a comfortable margin over Andrea Grecu.
But not a perfect run. Lots of tapping, lots of skidding that we're seeing happening.
Again, I wonder what the weather forecast told them yesterday. Big flop off. Oh!
Oy.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised with this. Definitely going to have lots to clean up for that second heat.
Yeah, that 11-12 transition, that was pretty rocky. Only 1,800s up. That is not a top draw run from Kim Kilicky. That was about as random as you'll see, I think, today from her. Let's hope she tidies it up in the second heat. A winner on this track last season. She has 5 gold medals in her career, adding 2 of those already this year. She's complaining about visibility as well, yeah.
Yeah.
Garnet's absolutely nothing. Well, again.
Yeah. Big tap.
Oh.
Lifting her brake girl up as she heads into 5. It looked like she couldn't see. So that is, I think, a pretty accurate.
Oh, that's when I thought she was really, really in trouble. Yeah, she's saying, well, this is Gatis Goots there from the FIBT jury. She's saying it's icing up. This is not normal fog. This is the mist that is coming off all the snow and ice in the trees here. So it is freezing fog. Bianca Reeby, next up for Canada with Erica Voss behind her. Erica, silver medalist in the push worlds with Cynthia Appia. Bianca just about gets in and avoids hitting the wall like Hansi Lochner did twice yesterday on his way to gold in the two-man.
Bianca's a relatively new pilot as well. She came as a brakeman and then swapped into the pilot seat.
Yeah, it's her 7th World Cup. And she had a 14th place run in the Monobob yesterday. This track is very new to her.
And it's a difficult track to nail in 6 runs, especially when you're splitting between doing monobob and two-man.
Yeah. 6
runs in a week's all you get.
The second week here will definitely have helped up her run volume. In fact, she made her World Cup debut here as a brakewoman with Alicia Rissling back in January 2019. This is her first time being allowed to see where she goes. So half a second back on Kim Kilicky, and this is 3rd place at the line. Linda Rush on the left, Justin Cripps on the right. Cripps was a medalist last year on this track. Sort of forget that he only retired in the summer. And there he is coaching, 58.15.
And the Canadian program's in a little bit of a rebuilding. I mean, Chris Spring has been dealing with injuries.
Yep.
Cripps has retired. Rissling has retired as well. So it's a new guard here.
Yep. And picking up the baton, I think Bianca Reeby's got a bright future. She certainly seems to have the talent, and she's got the right attitude as well.
Definitely. This 4-5 transition is really difficult for the athletes today.
Yeah. And it's 3 to 4, because that sets you late into 4, and then you're late on the way to 5, and then you're bouncing all over the place. Kilicky, Grecu, Reeby, the top 3 after our first 5 sleds. Altenberg in Saxony, a cold and frosty morning. It's been snowing for most of the week, so very different conditions from last weekend here. Our 6th starter in race 6 of the Women's Bobsleigh World Cup is Kaylee Humphries. She's got Keisha Love behind her today. Kaylee just off the podium yesterday in 4th place. And her run volume is pretty decent here.
Yep.
This is her 122nd World Cup start. And this is a track she absolutely adores.
Definitely, and she's been wildly successful on this track as well. Especially as a North American, usually they don't like this track as much.
She's had 7 wins here, including 2 in Monobob, 11 medals so far. There's rarely a podium that goes by without Humphreys on it.
And she is a phenomenal driver. A little bit of skidding there. You can see those front runners kind of dancing as she's trying to bring it back into control.
Won the first race here last year with Keisha behind her, 200s up. Now, will the goggles ice as badly as the visors on the helmet? She is the only athlete who drives in goggles. She learned that from Pierre Luders when she was learning to drive.
And stuck with it ever since.
57.44. Okay, so again, not perfect, but she has the lead by a quarter of a second over Kim Kilicki. In fact, Kaylee, I was chatting to her yesterday after winning, she won the Monobob race. She told me something I never knew. She actually went to driving school before she started as a brakewoman. And on the final day of driving school, they crashed, she broke her collarbone, and then she went, right, what am I going to do now? I know, I'll try being a pusher. So she was a driver before she was a brakewoman, before she was a driver.
Just going back and forth. You can see that skid, and then those runners, she's trying to get them back under control. Out of 15 here, she takes a tap on the left side. So she's going to look at this run and definitely see areas where she can improve on. Top part of the track, though, was really good.
Yeah. Start to race from like out of 9.
Yeah, she's talking to Gattis. Again, the fog is freezing on the visor, and you can't heat these. It's not like a heated windshield. Not that many of our rental cars have those either. Cynthia Appia, Neve Hockey behind her. First time these two have been together. Cynthia had a crash in last week's race, didn't end up across the line with her brakewoman on board. But Neve, who normally brakes for Bianca Riebe, Bianca with Erica Voss today, is in with Cynthia.
Just a little bit too long there on corner 2, pushing her off to the right side.
Finished in 5th place in the Monobob race yesterday. She had a slightly shaky run, but she got them both down and done, so rebuilding her confidence in this track.
Definitely. It's a place she has struggled in the past, so it's good to have 2 race weeks here in a row to really kind of work on those areas.
Yeah, because you don't want to walk away after a crash without having a chance to right those wrongs. You want to get back on the horse that threw you, and that's exactly what she's had the opportunity to do a little while down the straightaway.
I'm curious if it goes back to that visibility that we've been hearing from the athletes. It's really hard to...
Well, you all think your way down with your eyes closed, trying to picture the track. Actually doing it with your eyes closed when there's real jeopardy at speed is a very different kind of jeopardy, isn't it?
Well, certainly taking away one of your main senses as you go down the track would be very, very difficult.
So 5:76, 3rd best start, 6th best run. She's right behind Wai Ming Ming, only 500s in it.
Coming off of 9, she takes a tap, puts her into a bit of a skid and goes to the slider's right side, which makes Kreisel quite difficult as she enters. Just a little bit more pressure than the athlete would like to deal with.
She immediately has to handle that pressure, otherwise she'll shoot up to the roof and be really in a world of pain. So, yeah.
And that big skid as she enters 14 again.
I've seen worse. Kim Kilicki, hello, we're looking at you.
True.
Yeah. All right, so sigh of relief. I think everybody breathes a sigh of relief when they get it back down, don't they? Nadia Pasternak returns to the Swiss program again after a couple of weeks away. She raced in Whistler and Park City. And those are only 2 races since the game. She's back with Melanie Hassler. Melanie in her 19th World Cup start. They didn't race last week, the Swiss. They had a bit of time in St. Moritz. Not much. Only a couple of days on ice. 5:76 is the getaway, and that's quick. If you tie Cynthia Appia at the start, you know you're doing the right kind of things.
Definitely, and it did look like they overran it a little bit. Big tap there as they enter 4.
So it's a real marathon start here. You can run a long, long way, and certainly the Germans did yesterday. A number of the teams did yesterday in the men's race. The women are doing the same. The start grooves go a long way down.
And it's finding that balance of when you want to hop into the sled to have the most momentum and still enough time in the exit of the grooves before corner 1.
Challenging Kim Kilicki here, but slipping a little behind the German sled. Kaylee Humphreys still the race leader. This is about a 3rd place run. Again, you can hear the little taps.
But nothing major like we've seen some of the sleds prior to her.
Yeah,
go
3500s back, third place. So what's that? 900s behind the European champion Kim Kalicki. It's a decent run. And again, she was not here last week, so this is basically a standard race week on this track. She has raced here before, but has not had 2 weeks of run volume. So her best result here previously, a 13th place finish. Oh, just gets a bit hooked up. Luckily, Nadia loads quite gently. They get away with that.
Maybe a couple strides too much as she enters, and then that tap. Seeing those runners lift or the Kufin as she enters into corner 4.
Well, they're getting rehearsed for St. Moritz, where it's about 1.5 miles to the first turn, and they run it all the way down there. Well, we've had one Swiss sled. We next get to the other one, Martina Fonteneva, with Mara Morel behind her. Martina in what I believe will be her last ever World Cup start. 39th Women's Bobsleigh World Cup. This is only her 2nd World Cup start of the season. Mara, her 4th World Cup and only her 9th race since she made her debut in the World Cup debut in bobsledding in January 2021. I'm loving the sock action there, though.
Yeah.
Little bit of leopard print, not a bad thing at all.
Similar to Katy Burrell.
591. I think we're going to see Katy Burrell in Innsbruck, actually, after the World Champs. She was saying she was hoping to be there, so that'll be good to see her around and about.
Nice and smooth as she enters 5.
Well, Martina's never had the fastest start, but she does know how to drive a bobsled, and that is really going to help her. Her best ever World Cup result was in St. Moritz, in 4th place, and I'm sure she'll be hoping for a big top 6 finish. Her career, but she dumps it. That's really hard to hang on here. This is properly being tossed around in a washing machine, so you can see that they're both halfway out of the sled.
Yeah.
And Mara desperately trying to cling on inside. I pretty much guarantee that Martina will not go for a second run. They've taken a lot of ice.
But she has crossed the finish line, so should she want, she could make a second.
She could do, but look, they are hanging out of the sled.
Yeah. And unfortunately, they will go to the low
point. Up and down and up and down.
Yeah.
Back down to the low point between 16 and 17, and that's where the sled will come out. Unfortunately, unlike Winterberg a couple of weeks ago, there's nobody there waiting to catch them. They just don't have the access there.
No, it's a really difficult place.
Yeah. You can see right there where that platform is. That is the lowest point here, and that's where the sled will come out. See, the medics have arrived as well. You can hear the girls talking to each other.
Yeah.
So Mara clambers out first to leave a bit of room.
Yeah, as she comes off of 9 here, it's just a little bit skinny, could be tappy as well. And this is where the other athletes were saying they started to lose visibility. So I don't know if that's affecting her. She got an unlucky bump on that expansion joint.
And that pitches her backwards almost into the Kreisel. And then she's behind on the wave. She's going down when she should be going up. And when she brings it down on the exit, it's way too early.
And it's just too much to be able to fix at this point. You can't haul this.
I can't remember the last time I saw somebody hit the roof on the exit there.
That's a big one.
Yeah. And the problem is, the driver does not have a seatbelt. The driver braces their feet against footrests, and the small of the back, their backside basically, against this tiny little half moon of plastic seat. And if you get popped out of that seat, all you're holding on to is metal cables that are attached to the steering. They do not give you any way of holding yourself in the sled. And often you'll see it's the brake athletes who are hanging out, but there it was Martina who was hanging out. She's sliding on the ice, and now a lot of athletes wear burns vests. They're not mandatory. They absolutely should be, the same way the helmets are. But a lot of athletes do. But we saw a couple of weeks ago, one of the Latvian sleds crashed in Winterberg, and despite a Kevlar burns vest, one of the brakemen had really serious burns all the way across his shoulder and down his back. He said, yeah, I'll be back in a few weeks. But I mean, it makes an awful lot of a mess, and
Ideally, you never need it, but it's good to be wearing
ideally, you
it.
never need a helmet, but that doesn't stop us making them mandatory, you know. So, and it is the same as a seatbelt in a car, you know. When it goes wrong, you need everything you can, and it does go wrong. And this track is a place that is hard. It is hard.
Yeah, and like you said, they would do wear Kevlar vests, but it's not mandatory. But it's still not created for bobsled necessarily.
Yeah.
So it's not been something that's tested over high speeds on ice.
I think that there is, I mean, we're seeing it in MotoGP and in top flight motorcycle endurance racing, where the athletes have now, you know, little air vests built into their leathers, and the leathers are getting more and more Kevlar and carbon fiber mix kind of protection. So when you come off at high speed, it doesn't just grind through the leather and through you. And that's the same deal here, you know. How can you burn on ice? Well, it's not the temperature of the ice, it's the friction. It's the fact you're doing 70 miles. Think about coming off a motorcycle at 70 miles an hour on a tarmac road. It's going to go through your leather, and that's what ice does to lycra and then to skin and bone. So a
Plus
track
the
hold,
excess, the weight of the sled.
yeah,
too.
well, exactly right. Yeah, you're not just floating free down the ice and trying to keep your body, you know, wriggling to try and stop the heat burning through. You are being held down by 290 kilos of ice and sled and athlete. And in a four-man, even more so, because all the athletes are hanging on in, and so they make up the weight of the sled as well. So there's an awful lot. And then, of course, you look at, you know, the impact with the head on the ice, bouncing around, whether you've got a helmet on or not. You look at potential neck injuries and definitely look at, you know, concussion protocols as well. So the medics will be checking the girls out. I have no doubt that Martina will not go again in the second heat. There's absolutely no point going back here. She's heading to St. Moritz. It's what she's been aiming for, you know, since the end of the games in February. Just no point, absolutely no point in trying to take another run. For Yingqing and the rest of our athletes, though, the remaining four sleds, a 5-minute track hold. And of course,
in the track hold, they just make sure the ice is good and safe for the next athletes to go.
And also you have to manhandle the sled out of the track without the use of a crane or anything else. And so, yeah, it's all a little bit time consuming and physical. And for the athletes at the top, you know exactly why there is a track hold. Yep. And if that doesn't just add to that little bit of apprehension about Altenberg, then, you know, nothing's going to. Here we go then, Yingqing and Wang Chuan. And again, this is a change around in their regular lineup. Wang, the more experienced of the two brake women, this is her 10th World Cup, but she has slid with Wai Mingming this season. 17th World Cup start already for Yingqing. Seems that the Chinese program is so new, but this is their third full World Cup season. She was 6th last week, so she does know how to get down this track.
The third full World Cup season, and they missed a year because of that COVID year as well.
Yep.
The looping line in corner 4 is what these athletes want, to be able to have that clean line into 5.
Yeah, and like the Kreisel, you need to allow the sled to climb and dive as G-forces push it, but it's got to be in the right place.
Exactly, it's finding that happy medium, that balance, which comes with run volume.
Nice looking run so far. 4th best speed. This is a top 5 run off a 6th place start. This is really nice from Yingqing. And if she had any nerves at all, she's really tailored them well. That's a great effort. 5th place, 5300s back. And she is 1800s off the podium. So Melanie Hassler, Andrea Grecu ahead of her, then Kim Kilicki 2nd, and Kaylee Humphreys is our race leader. That's a nice looking run from Yingqing. That will have given her a whole load of confidence.
Definitely. A little bit of a tap as she enters into 4, but not like we've seen some of the other athletes take. Just on that take on, really looping. That's what you want to see, just like you said, in the right places so that they can get a nice entry into 5. Bit of a flop as she comes off of 9 into the straightaway.
All the crowd watching there. Very easy to get close to the track at that straightaway out of corner 9. And of course, good view. It's always a bit dramatic. And there's a Bratwurst stand right behind you. What's not to love? Okay, 10 sleds down, and next up is Nicole Vogt of the USA. Macy Tarleton starting with her. Macy in only her third World Cup start, brand new to the program this year, was only recruited in the summer. This is her 5th bobsleigh race. She was crashed twice in Whistler by Nicole and by Riley Compton before she made her debut in the World Cup in Lake Placid. So she knows all about bobsled delays.
Definitely. And the Americans do a really great job of being able to recruit these really strong push athletes on both the men's and women's side.
Nicole did not race last week. This is her first time in Altenberg. But here is her first World Cup race here. 10th best start, 6:23. Again, without the familiarity that Nicole Vogt has with the North American track, she's actually making this look really quite smooth, considering that she's not raced here before.
She's a little bit flat at the entry of Kreisel, just trying to probably do a more safe line through, but not a bad run looking for her.
Well, again, it's her first time in Altenberg. Next week is the World Championships, which is what it's all about this season. So if she's not got fat runners for speed, if she's got thin runners for control, I 100% would underline that that is a good call. No point allowing the athlete to crash themselves, damage themselves, or damage their morale. Get her down, get her down safe, get Altenberg done, and get the hell on the road to she's delighted with that.
It's like she won the race.
That was a smooth looking run. I mean, she's had her troubles here, so
definitely, as probably every athlete has, and like you said, she's probably on thinner runners, so athletes have the choice. They can go thinner with a little bit more control, or fatter would be faster but less control. I'd say that was a good choice by the Americans.
Absolutely.
Well done.
All right,
good
get
job.
back up and do it again. One and done doesn't happen here. Lara Nolte next up with Naila Skuten back behind her. Lara in the bronze medal position last week. She's the Monobob European champion. And in last year's Europeans took a bronze in St. Moritz. She was the European champion in 2021 on her home track in Altenberg. 5:72. That is a very good start. And again, Naila Skuten coming into the program this year. This is only her 8th ever race in a bobsleigh. She is really producing the goods at the start.
A little bit messy here for Nolte.
Little skiddy. She's not got the control of the back of the sled. It's looking a little bit monobobby. That's better.
Goes back to what we were talking about with the runners, potentially just are a bit fatter so she can go faster, but
challenging Kaylee, only 800s back. Lara Nolte, the winner in Winterberg, her first gold of the season, but that's uncomfortable. She's going to be second at the line, but by how much? 5 700s ahead of her teammate Kim Kalicki. So 1900s behind Kaylee and 500s ahead of Kim Kalicki, and Kalicki in the bronze medal position. And Melanie Haslett in 4th is 900s back. She's not out in the medal hunt. And another 9 behind her is Andrea Grecu. So the top 3 absolutely have to perform again in the second heat. Lara shaking her head there. Well, the exit of 4 into 5. Look at that.
Not clean. Again, that brakeman's just getting airlifted.
Yeah. And I challenge anybody to go round and lift a fully laden 2-seat sled off the ground. And again,
just messy.
Yeah, backed in there exactly the same way that Kim Kalicki did. Well, that was the face we got from Lara after the first heat in the Monobob yesterday. She went out and won the gold, won the European gold, finished in 2nd place. Victoria Chernanska, our final sled in the first heat, and she has got Lucia Mokrasova behind her. Lucia in only her 2nd World Cup start. She has never raced a bobsled other than in the World Cup. Former heptathlete recruited in the autumn into the team. And Victoria, Youth Olympic silver medalist behind Georgeta Popescu in 2020 in St. Moritz. So again, I'm sure she will be looking forward to heading back there.
Yeah, another one of these young teams. Oh, a little bit struggling to get in the sled there, the brake girl.
Yeah, Well, it's a brand new team. It's only Victoria's second World Cup race. And it's only her, well, effectively, fourth season on ice if you include the build-up to the Youth Olympics in 2020 as a season. So very limited run volume for the driver from Slovakia. She raced in Winterberg. She was at the Junior Worlds last week, so she didn't race here. Actually, it's not a bad-looking run.
She's got to bring it back here.
Yeah, 10th best speed, hangs it out. She was zigging when she should have zagged in the Kreisel, but she knew what the danger was, didn't bring it down too early. Again, whoa, looking like a monobob. Just checking there that the brakewoman was still in the sled. She is 1.54 back. Hey, got it down, got it done, 58.98. That's all you need to know. First time in Altenberg. I think, Elizabeth, you would probably agree, is never going to look that tidy, is it?
No, and she's young. She's got a long career ahead of her. Get this first World Cup in Altenberg done and dusted, and then move on from there.
Absolutely. And she's not last in the field. She's ahead of Nicole Vogt, who's also making her first race here, and of course ahead of Martina Fonteneva, who crashed, who's got a whole host more experience.
It's so wavy in there, and now that there's no Koenigsee, I mean, there's not too many Kreisels where you can practice with those bigger waves.
Yeah.
So when you come to Altenberg, it's a new feeling for all of these pilots into that uphill section.
I don't know what the coaches teach you about where the red flag is, like do not steer until you're under it or something, but she did just enough there, not too much to bring it down too early and then get forced up high. She just about got it off, and there you go. That's all it takes. It's not going to be pretty, but if you succeed ugly, you still succeed. That's all it's about here.
It doesn't have to be pretty.
It doesn't have to be pretty. In the case of Kaylee Humphries, it was pretty nice looking lines, and that's where the speed came from. She has a near 2/10 advantage over Lara Nolte and Kim Kilicki, both of whom had pretty random runs. Do not expect that to be the case in the second heat. Kaylee Humphries, the race leader in our sixth Women's Bobsleigh World Cup of the season. She's currently ranked third in the overall standings. And Kaylee with a victory in Lake Placid and only off the podium once in fourth place in Winterberg. So if she can take gold here, don't forget for the Europeans, it's Nolte, Kilicki, Hassler, Grecu, and behind Reeby is Georgieta Popescu and Victoria Chenanska. So there are 6 European sleds left in the race. And so they could all end up with a large, as they say, a large podium, a top 6 result here in the European Championships. Take out of our North Americans and our Chinese athletes, and suddenly there you go. So Georgieta Popescu, Victoria Chenanska will go for a second time. Only 400s apart, these two young Youth Olympic medalists. Gold for Georgieta, silver for Victoria 2 years ago. They're 400s apart, so they still have that tough rivalry going on. Well, that's it for the first of our 2 heats. We will be back at 10:50, so just under an hour from now. Until then, for Elizabeth Meyer and the IBSF TV crew here, I'm Martin Hayden saying good morning. Thank you for joining us. We will see you back here at 10:50, 09:50 GMT, 04:50 Eastern. Bye for now.